Believe it or not, I've actually purchased and installed this RO system twice. Once at our last house where we had it for 4 years, and again at our new house after we moved. If you've been going back and forth on this brand, or if you're not convinced that the price is actually worth it, I've had 4 years to figure that out. So let's talk about why I keep coming back to it and whether or not it's right for you. Now you also might be wondering why this isn't under my sink. I actually have a full video on that where I walk you through how I installed this in my basement and how I connected it directly to the refrigerator. The link is in the video description below if you want to check it out after this video. Now, before I get into the specifics, I think there's one question that's worth keeping in mind as you look at different RO systems, and it's not which one removes the most contaminants. Most of those actually do that pretty well. In fact, the Express Water's RO line has been independently tested to NSF and ANSI standards, so the filtration claims are backed by actual lab results. But I think the better question is what the system gives back, because there's a real difference between water that's been stripped of everything and water that's been filtered and then restored. And that's really what separates most of the systems out there from this one. Standard reverse osmosis does its job almost too well. It strips out everything, including beneficial minerals like calcium, potassium, and magnesium that you'd actually want to keep in your water. This unit has an alkaline remineralization stage that adds those back in after the water goes through the membrane. When I first purchased this 4 years ago, it was actually pretty hard to find an RO system that included an alkaline stage. More and more brands are offering it now, but it's one of those things that you really need to understand and decide on if you need it now up front, because you either get a system that already has it or you don't. It's not really something that you can easily add on later. With the alkaline filter, you can definitely tell there's a difference in the taste. And for me personally, I'm at the point now where the alkaline filter isn't something I'd give up. Now it does add a cartridge to the maintenance cycle, but it's worth it, and we'll cover what that actually looks like when we get to the maintenance section. So that's the water quality side of it, what the system gives back. Now beyond that, there's also the question of what the system does to protect you. So the Express Water makes quite a few different models, and if you're comparing them, one thing to pay attention to is whether the system includes a UV stage. This one does. It adds a layer of protection against biological contaminants that a lot of other models don't address. Now, whether you need it or not depends on your water source. On city water, you probably don't need it because municipal treatment handles a lot of that. But if you're on well water, it's going to matter a little bit more. For me, it made sense for what it adds. Now, there's one more thing on the protection side I want to talk about, and this one I'm actually going to push back on a little bit. This unit has an included leak detector, which honestly sounds great because if you have a leak from your RO unit, this is one of those things that can give you some peace of mind. But I'm not convinced that the one that comes from Express Water and the one that's included in these kits is actually practical. The only reason I bring this up is because Express Water highlights this as a benefit, and in theory it is. But in an installation, no matter where it's located, whether or not it's in the basement like mine is here, or if it's up under the sink, the amount of water required to trigger this valve to shut it off is pretty significant in my opinion. Yes, it can shut off the water automatically if there's an issue, but it can also shut off the water if there isn't a problem, especially underneath the sink. Something could catch the lever and shut off the water flow accidentally, which could be confusing if it happened. Now, on the other hand, a smart leak detector placed near the system will catch even a slow drip the moment it hits the floor, and it will send you a phone alert. And that's really what I'd recommend here, not because the included detector is defective, but just because I believe there's a much better solution for this problem. So that's how the system is designed to work. Now let me tell you what it's actually like to live with. And honestly, the fact that I bought this unit again when we moved is probably the most useful thing I can tell you. If it had given me problems at our last house, I would have looked at something else, but I didn't. To give you a little bit more context, we're a family of 5, and we've never had a problem keeping up with the demand. The tank recovers pretty quickly, and the fact that it comes with a 100-gallon per day RO membrane really helps a lot with production. Now, that's not to say we haven't had any production issues whatsoever. If we're going out for an event and we are filling up all of our water bottles at the same time with a family of 5, then we can strain the system and we won't have as much output as we would like and enough pressure. However, that's not really something that we encounter all the time. And at the same time, it does have a high enough flow where we can still fill up the water bottles. So it's not really an issue. However, if that is a concern for you, you can always add on an additional storage tank or replace this one with a larger one. One other thing worth knowing is, like with any RO system, this does produce wastewater, and that's just how reverse osmosis works. The ratio of wastewater to clean water is pretty standard for the category, and it's never really been something that I've been too concerned about or noticed on my water bill. And now going back to the install, it does come with its own faucet, which I did not use for my setup, but it's a clean design and would work fine for a standard under sink installation. The kit does come with everything you need to connect it. The only thing it doesn't include are tools, of course, and obviously if you have a custom setup like this one here, then you're going to encounter some additional things that you'll have to purchase. Now for the maintenance cycle, I'd say it's pretty typical for an RO system. So every 6 months you're replacing 4 cartridges, the sediment filter, 2 carbon filters, and the alkaline filter in this case. Once a year, the membrane and the post-carbon filter needs to be changed, and the UV bulb is rated to last every 6 to 12 months, depending on how long it lasts in reality. And I don't have an exact time frame on this one yet, unfortunately, but if UV protection is important to you, I would recommend changing it every 6 months. And for me, I'm fine with pushing the life of the bulb, so I'll replace it annually at the same time as the membrane. But none of that is unusual for what the system is trying to do. And as far as the cost goes, the replacement cartridges are in line with what you'd expect. And I would say that nothing caught me off guard, so it shouldn't catch you off guard either. Okay, now while all that sounds great, there is one problem I faced with the system that I want to be upfront with you about. At our old house, after one of my filter changes, the water started tasting kind of off. It was pretty significant to me and not just something I could ignore. And it turns out the new alkaline filter was adding an oily taste to the water that I hadn't experienced before. But it wasn't a problem with the cartridge. It turns out it was just a problem with my ability to follow directions. I had rushed the job on the replacement cycle and I didn't flush the new alkaline cartridge out as long as the instructions said I should before I started drinking the water again. And that wasted hours of my time trying to figure out what was wrong. Once I flushed it properly, it went back to normal, and it's just another reminder to follow the directions, and that rushing a process can cost you more time in the end. So after 4+ years across 2 different houses, here's my honest read on who this actually makes sense for. If you want a complete system with alkaline remineralization, UV protection, and everything included out of the box, and you don't want to piece things together after the fact or wonder if you're missing something, this configuration is a solid choice. Now, if UV isn't a priority for your situation, they make this model without that option, and I'd go with that. But the one thing I wouldn't do is get this model without the alkaline filter, because to me, it's a non-negotiable. The taste difference is real enough that I wouldn't go back to a system without it. And if you're just looking for the most affordable entry point into RO filtration, Express Water does offer much simpler configurations for less, which will still get you dramatically better water. So at the end of the day, the question I kept coming back to with RO systems was what the water gives back, not just what gets removed. And this unit is one of a few that actually answers that question well. 4 years at the last house and now here, for what this system includes, the alkaline filter, the UV stage, the price is more than justified in my opinion, and it's the one I keep coming back to. If you want to check out this model at its current best price, the link is in the video description below. Thanks for watching, and be sure to check out the installation video next if you're still curious as to why this is in my basement and not under my sink.